Imagine it's late at night. Clouds obscure the crescent moon. Your flashlight's beam illuminates the 5 feet in front of you, but otherwise it's pitch dark. Then you're standing at the door of a house. The doorknob is ornate with etchings swirled into the bronze. Or maybe it's a simple chrome handle that you twist open, or a brass handle shaped like a python. As you reach out and open the door, you're not scared. You know no one's in the house yet. What you're feeling is sort of a guarded anticipation. You scan the flashlight to take in the room. Maybe beyond the room, you get a glimpse of a hall or a staircase. But you stay in this room, this first room, because this is where you need to start. That is how I write a novel. For the record, I am not actually breaking into a house. I am probably at my desk. All the rest is up here. This dark room is my workspace. I may start with an image, a feeling, a question. Often this involves a character I pluck from my imagination, probably one who's been making more noise than the others. I place her in a setting, one which I draw from another part of my imagination, and I start talking to her. Or I drop another character in and see what they want from each other. For me, the first act of writing isn't so much about creating as it is about paying attention. When I first started writing seriously back in the late 80s, I thought this was a strange and possibly not very effective way to go about writing a novel. But as I got to know more writers in the Chicago mystery community, I learned it wasn't so unusual. As far as I can tell, there are 3 ways novelists go about their work. Some will outline the entire book from beginning to end before they begin writing it. An outline could be half the length of a finished book. Other writers like to sketch out a short outline, a page or 2, which is often more like a suggestion than a directive. This allows them the flexibility to make changes to plot or character. If I had to guess, I'd say this is the most common way. Then there's my group. We're sometimes referred to as pantsers, as in writing by the seat of your pants. I prefer to label us explorers, but that never caught on. There's some friendly debate among practitioners of each method, especially the outliners and the explorers. The outliners think we're lazy, and the explorers wonder why the outliners bother to write a book if they already know what's going to happen. I will say that the explorers are in good company. Author E.L. Doctorow once said, "Writing is like driving at night in the fog. You can only see as far as your headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way." One of the reasons I write this way is because even though I don't know where to start, I can't wait to start. To find out about my characters, who they are, what they love, what makes them do stupid or brave things. I'm looking for that quirk that sets my protagonist apart and makes me want to know everything. What's the worst thing they're capable of? And what's the bravest thing they'd do even if no one was watching? I'm psyched. I don't want to quash this exuberance by stopping to figure out where I'm going. Exuberance is temporary. I don't want to waste it. I've been asked if writing without an outline means I'll get the book finished faster. I laugh. Nope, not at all. All that time I didn't spend outlining will be spent cutting, revising, staring at the wall, thinking. And I need to be open to that. Here's an example. I was 3/4 of the way through my first book, Murder in Store. My late husband, Don, and I were talking about plot and characters over dinner. We did that a lot. At one point, he asked, "Who murdered Preston?" I shrugged, I don't know. His eyes widened. Don knew that I plotted as I wrote, but I think he believed that I had a rough idea of where I was going. No. I conceded that perhaps it was time to figure out who my murderer was. So I lined up all my characters except for the dead guy and asked, "All right, which one of you did it?" They responded in character, "Not me, no way, don't be ridiculous." And they were right, all of them. Each one of them was hiding something, but it wasn't a murder. So I had to create a new character who I wove into earlier chapters, because one cardinal rule of mystery writing of the mystery is that you must play fair with the reader. And introducing the killer on page, 10 pages before the end is not playing fair. It took me years to convince myself that this way of writing was okay. I did try to plot a book once, didn't go well. I am a terrible goal setter, so I don't plan novels, I sort of discover them. I need to trust in the process, or I'd never have the nerve. And I do. All I have to do is get myself to my computer and start typing. And that's not always easy, but that's what and trust that it will happen. Recently, I discovered there's a name for this kind of uncertainty. This requires negative capability. Earlier, Steve read from Rebecca Solnit's book, where she quotes the poet Keats. Negative capability, that is, when a man is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, doubts, without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. Curiosity asks, what is true? Negative capability allows us to remain in the space before we know the answer. Solnit discusses how artists must be comfortable with the unknown. She writes, "It is a job of artists to open doors and invite in prophecies, the unknown, the unfamiliar. It's where their work comes from, although its arrival signals the beginning of the long disciplined process of making it their own." She goes on, "Scientists, too, as J. Robert Oppenheimer once remarked, live always at the edge of mystery, the boundary of the unknown. But scientists transform the known into the unknown, haul it in like fishermen. Artists get you out into that dark sea." Lately, I've been wondering what it would be like to live this way. And then I realized that I sort of do, sometimes. And I think many of us do. When I look back on my life, I can see that the times I'd embraced the unknown profoundly affected who I am today, and mostly in a good way. When I was in my late 20s, working at a job that I didn't want for my future, I quit, moved to DeKalb, and enrolled in the journalism master's program. At first, I was terrified, but it turned out to be a life-changing experience for me. I earned my MA, became a more disciplined writer, and married one of my professors. I am not a brave person, so I don't do this whole uprooting thing often, but I do sit at my computer with the next chapter heading at the top of the screen and no idea what the next scene will be, maybe for days, without ever doubting it would come. And it does. Sometimes I'll just start writing anything, hoping to pick up the flow of the book. Sometimes this means recognizing that the scene I'm trying to write isn't the problem, it's the one I wrote last week, where I had that brilliant idea that had not aged well. Going back, revising or rewriting that scene, and some of the scenes after that. Eventually, a solution comes to me and I get through it and move on. Over the years, I think I've built up a tolerance for uncertainty. I've learned that I can adapt, function, and can even kind of enjoy it. When the mind isn't marching in a straight line, it's allowed to make some interesting connections. So now when this happens, when I spend days jotting down ideas, crossing them off, talking to myself, testing dialogue, I am not suffering from writer's block, I am practicing discovery. One of the greatest obstacles to creativity is fear. I play around with watercolor. Intellectually, I know that this bird I'm about to paint doesn't have to be good or mediocre. It can and probably will be rather awful. So why do I agonize putting that first brush stroke down on the paper? But once you know that every brush stroke is a part of that process, and whether it works or it doesn't, if you keep at it, it's going to take you somewhere interesting. I have several inspirational quotations strewn about my desk. The one that has been there the longest is Raymond Chandler's great line, "When in doubt, have two guys come through the door with guns." then there's one by Margaret Atwood. "If I waited for perfection, I would never write a word." While researching this talk, I discovered one by famed American pioneer and frontiersman, not to mention my childhood hero, Daniel Boone, that seemed to go with my message today. When Boone was asked about his journeys, he said, "No, I never did get lost, but I was bewildered for 3 days once." That's the trust part. I think all of us tend to be open to uncertainty. Otherwise, why would we be here? Unitarian Universalism emphasizes a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We're more about the questions and the answers, the mystery, and the process of discovery. Society today is so focused on instant gratification. We want simple, black and white answers, and damn it, we're not going to wait for them. And we don't have to. Not when most of us are carrying around a device that contains the accumulated knowledge of mankind. It also contains the idiotic ramblings of mankind, and it's not always easy to tell the difference. I think it's helpful to consider the ways that being open to mystery and embracing discovery as a process rather than a destination can transform us, and not just in artistic endeavors. Living in the question allows us to distinguish assumptions from preferences. I'm going to use a plotting example here to illustrate this. Let's say my main character is a 1950s housewife, dutiful housewife. She works hard at making her husband feel like he's a king, does everything for him. She'll wake up an hour before he does, put on her makeup, perk up her hair, and then go back to bed so he'll wake up next to his glamorous wife and not the one whose face was slathered in cold cream 2 hours ago. Well, what if one day her husband tells her he's leaving her because he just needs to change? What does she do? How far will she go to preserve this perfect wife image she has so carefully cultivated? If this were a crime novel, she'd probably kill him. She gets so caught up in the thrill of revenge that she hasn't given her a chance to do any discovery. No uncertainty for her. In an alternate plot, she would live in the question, what am I now? She discovers she's a natural comedian, and you have the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Plans are predictions, not reality. Living without one lets you adapt to opportunities, relationships, and interests you couldn't have anticipated. Sometimes the most meaningful changes arrive uninvited. Instead of asking, am I on schedule? Ask what seems alive in me right now. Curiosity gets you room to breathe. When an activity has no specific objective, there's no pressure. It expands you. Let's take the hapless Sam and Dave from our For All Ages reading. Those two are so focused on the whole that they're missing the treasure. And that poor dog, it could have done so much better. Granted, at times we all need a roadmap. It can keep us moving through difficulties, help assess progress, reduce decision fatigue, keeps us from drifting. But it's important to notice what's going on inside you. What am I drawn to lately? What drains me repeatedly? What kinds of people make me feel more like myself? And what would I try if I weren't trying to optimize everything? The thing to living is, we don't get to understand first and then live. To quote Kierkegaard, Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Trusting discovery is not the same as believing that everything happens for a reason. In fact, it's almost the opposite. Everything happens for a reason is a statement about reality. Trusting discovery is a statement about how we respond to reality. Suppose someone unexpectedly loses a job. Everything happens for a reason suggests that someday this person will understand why this had to happen. Trusting discovery says, I don't know what this means yet. Let me see what's possible now. When I'm writing with no predetermined plot, events occur through my engagement with the story. I go from room to room in that dark house, turning on lights as I discover each room until the house is ablaze in light. Why can't our lives be the same? A novel doesn't arrive all at once, nor does a person's life. Each is revealed one scene, one day at a time. If I had to know in chapter 5 what happens in chapter 20, there would be no room for the novel to grow, to become. In life, we demand from today the certainty that only tomorrow can provide. But when do we get a chance to breathe? What if, instead, we trusted that today's task is simply to write today's scene as honestly and as faithfully as we can? A whole story doesn't need to be visible for the next sentence to be true. Thank you.
Visit us at UUSG.org.